We're going to go through exit slip 2.4 that deals with that I can statement that we can use area models to help us understand multiplication of fractions and sometimes with mixed numbers as well. So Anya's family divided up their garden so that 3/4 of the garden will have vegetables. Okay, so again, we got to read for understanding here. They're going to have a garden and 3/4 of it will be vegetables. The other 1/4, they don't tell us what that's going to be. Okay, and Anya and her sister were told that they get to plant a half of just the vegetable portion. So they get to plant half, not half the garden, but just half of the vegetables. So our number one thing we need to do here is figuring out what kind of a number sentence to get this in, because we're trying to find out how much of the family's garden will Anya and her sister plant. I want to know how much they have to plant. So what number sentence can tell me that? And I know if I multiply a fraction, I know the answer, and by a fraction, my answer will go down. Okay, and we know they're not going to plant 3/4 of the garden. It's going to have to be less than that. So I'm thinking this is a multiplication problem. And the way I'm looking at it, that Anya and her sister, they get to plant 1/2 of, we know when we say multiply, that could be of, 1/2 of the vegetable part. Well, I know the vegetable part is 3/4 of that garden. So they just get to plant a half of that 3/4 of the garden. So I know my answer is going to be smaller than 3/4. I've got to cut that in half. Okay, because remember when we multiply by a half, it's the same as dividing by 2. All right, so let's cut 3/4 in half, and let's do that with an area model. We've already got the number sentence here to represent this problem. So I wrote the number sentence up here. I'll rewrite it down here. Half of the 3/4. So we've now got to draw that area model here to show that. So I'm going to start with, and when I draw these guys, I always draw the second one first because I need a half of that 3/4. So let's start with 3/4 and see what that would look like. I'm just going to divide it this way in this area. And right now I've got 4 parts, and my job is to shade 3/4 of them because that's going to be the vegetable. So I'm going to shade it this way. And that part that's shaded right now, that represents the vegetables. So right now, I can say that is my vegetables that are in here right now that's shaded. Okay, and I know Anya and her sister get to plant half of those. So now what I want to do is cut that in half, go in the other direction. And I could use a different color marker, but I'm going to show you how when I do this. I'm going to cut it in half this way. And now they get to plant half of that 3/4. Right now I'm only looking at this. That's 3/4. There's the vegetables. And I need to find half of that then. So I could pick the top half or the bottom half. It doesn't really matter. I could do other things too, but let's just make it simple. I'm going to take this top half and say this is what they get to plant. So I'm going to shade it going the other way. Just this top half, because you don't have to have different colors to do this like we've seen. Okay, we can also do it just by going the other way. And I can see now that just this top part here has been double shaded. Okay, that's half of that 3/4 because I cut this 3/4 in half. And so now my answer is just this double shaded part. So I can look in this whole garden, how much of the whole garden now. So now I need to look at this part. I know there's 8 equal parts in this garden. And the 2 sisters get to plant 1/8, 2/8, 3/8 of the garden. So we've got 3/8 of that total garden. And that proves it with my area model that a half of 3/4 is actually 3/8. My answer got smaller like I thought it would because I was cutting it in half. When you multiply by a fraction, your answer gets smaller. We've also talked about this area model proves that when we multiply a half times 3/4, you have learned back in your 5th grade standards that when you multiply across, it's quite simple. It always works. Okay, 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 4 is 8, and that matches up with my area model. And if you do that several times, you'll see that the area model always would prove that when you multiply across, you get the same thing. You don't have to have common denominators, and then that's why we really like multiplying. A lot of kids think it's simpler, a little bit less work. Knowing those multiplication facts, though, is very important, obviously. But today we're proving that you can show this, that you understand what multiplying fractions actually means, what it can look like by using that area model. So that way we've got a deep understanding and not just memorizing how to do things.